Welcome to the Vibrant Visibility Podcast. Being visible as a soul-led business owner isn't just about the practical strategies, marketing tips, and tech systems. It's also about the internal systems, the safety of your nervous system, the somatic connection, and the embodiment of being a badass CEO that will support you in all of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And I'm here to share all of that with you on this show. I'm your host, Shawnee Arsenault, a registered nurse turned visibility coach and business mentor for heart-centered coaches and healers. I created a six-figure coaching practice in my first year of business and scaled to multiple six figures my second year, all in the middle of getting pregnant with my first baby and becoming a new mama. If I can do this entrepreneurship thing, I know you can too. If you're ready to learn how to be a CEO in a way that feels aligned with your heart, become a lighthouse for the people that you're meant to serve, feel free to authentically express yourself and be a magnet for success, and grow your coaching business in a way that is sustainable and fulfilling, I can't wait to be in your ear along for the ride. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Vibrant Visibility Podcast. Today, I am just going to kind of riff on this topic that I've talked about with my own coach and have done a lot of my own work around, especially whenever I'm going through something really hard. And I felt called to share this insight with you guys. Obviously, you guys know that the title of this episode is You Don't Owe the Internet Anything. And I have been reflecting on this a lot as I was preparing to record this episode. And I want to start by acknowledging that in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of business building, there is this constant pressure to always show up online as a coach or healer, in today's digital age. And I know that I coach a lot around visibility and showing up authentically in your business and in your life. But I also want to address that there is a level of overwhelm that many people, including myself, feel around this expectation to show up all the time. And I'll share kind of a personal story here about what this actually, why this experience is really hitting home for me. And a lot of it has to do with my journey in motherhood. In the previous iteration of this podcast, back when it was Aligned and Well, I shared my birth story. My son is now 18 months old, but a couple years ago, I had a really, really tough time with being pregnant. I had preeclampsia. I had to deliver him 5 weeks early, and it was just a really traumatic experience. And I knew that I wanted to record an episode about it because it was such a deeply transformational time for me. But for a while there, it didn't feel right to share it because I was still so raw. I was still so vulnerable. I was still in the middle of processing through the trauma and needing a lot of support. So I didn't feel like I could share from a place of strength. I didn't feel like I could share from a place of, here's what I learned from that experience. I was still very much in this isn't fair. I was in victim land with it, which I also think can be totally okay, right? I was okay with where I was at, and I was meeting myself where I was at. And at the time, as I was processing my feelings about it with my coach, I knew that I wanted to share it with people, but I would just have such a hard time whenever I sat down to record that episode. I was having such a hard time getting it out, and I was getting emotional, and it was just really triggering for me. And she said to me, you don't owe the internet anything, right? You get to choose what you share with your audience. And even though vulnerability and being visible is a necessity in terms of creating a successful and sustainable practice, you also get to honor your own boundaries around that, right? Yes, there might be pressure coming from the outside world about how much you show up, but ultimately that is fabricated, right? We're all making it up as we go. And so the key message of this share right here, of this kind of encouragement, I'm hoping this is a really encouraging episode for some of you, is that you don't owe the internet your constant visibility. You get to set energetic boundaries in your business, and that's essential for having a business that's sustainable. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, kind of the pressure that we feel sometimes in showing up and being visible. I'll talk a little bit about the energetic boundaries that you can set for yourself and kind of some strategies for maintaining visibility without getting burnt out. And then some other tangible takeaways that I hope you walk away with today. So let's talk about the pressure of needing to show up all the time, right? There are society expectations, there's industry expectations as coaches, and there is this common belief that consistency equals online success, which, there's a level of truth to that, I think. But how many coaches and healers feel obligated to post every single day, to share, their personal stories all the time, to be constantly visible, to grow their businesses? And, I did talk last week about about hustle culture and how I think that there are moments where hustle is a good thing. But then there are also, on the opposite end of it, there are also times when hustle is really toxic, like that whenever it's coming from the wrong place. Last week we talked about hustling coming from the right place, when it comes from a place of creativity, of wanting to work because you love what you do, versus the toxic hustle culture, which is I have to hustle, I have to grind, I have to do in order to be successful, even at the risk of burning myself out or running myself ragged, right? So this side of hustle culture kind of fuels that need to like really over deliver at the expense of your own mental health, your own well-being. And this that directly affects the way that you show up in your business, the way that you coach your clients, the way that you show up in your life as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, or whatever. So permission here to set some boundaries for yourself, right? Like show up in ways that feel aligned and nourishing rather than forced. Because really, if you are in so much force energy with your marketing, with the way that you show up in your business, your audience, your potential clients out there, and even your current clients are going to sense that, right? They're going to sense that you're coming from a place that is very empty. They're going to sense that your energy is coming from a place that isn't really authentic. So this is especially true if you are going through a really hard time. For me, whenever I was going through like immediately postpartum, that was a really, really rough time for me. And honestly, I was really lucky that I got to unplug from my business, because I did a lot of hustling right before I went on maternity leave and got to fill my practice and had a waiting list of people to work with me whenever I got back. But immediately after having my son, and I was in that like postpartum period, I disappeared off the face of the earth. I didn't post on social media. I barely showed up live anywhere. The only things that I did were show up to my coaching calls, because at the time was in a group coaching container with a bunch of other mom entrepreneurs, like fellow mom entrepreneurs. And that's where I felt the most community. It's where I felt the most supported and held. So that was really the only thing that I did was go to those coaching calls, sometimes with my camera off because I was pumping or, sleep deprived and laying in my bed. And then I also had a therapist, and that was really the only way that I showed up for my business, was taking care of my mental health and making sure that I felt supported in community. But yeah, I barely showed up on social media. I didn't even like program like scheduled things to go out whenever I was on maternity leave. Every now and then I would share a post here and there, but it wasn't anything to the level of how I show up regularly in my business. And there was a lot of me that felt really guilty about that. I felt guilty for not showing up. And I had all of these fears, and I would talk about these on my coaching calls. I had all these fears about people forgetting about me, or me not being relevant anymore, me having to start from the ground up whenever I came back from maternity leave. Like there were so many things that I worried about. And then, of course, I get back from maternity leave, and all of those fears just kind of washed away, right? Like nobody forgot about me. People live lives outside of just like following my social media posts. So like it's funny that I kind of think about how much I was making it about me. And we tend to do that. We tend to do that as we grow and scale our businesses, is we feel like we have to be on all the time. We feel like we have to be in people's spaces all the time. When in reality, I mean, people are out there living their own lives, just like you are. And nobody is noticing. Oh, she hasn't posted in a while. So energetic boundaries, I think, are really important for you to set here. Energetic boundaries can look like, in business, especially online, when, how, and why you share certain things. I think acknowledging that you have a story that you really want to share, especially if it's something painful, especially if it's something that you've really struggled with or is a really dark topic, acknowledging that you want to share it, but then being really strategic about when and how. Right. So for me, I knew that I wanted to record an episode about my traumatic birth experience, but I couldn't do it immediately after because I was too raw and too, like, I was in such a tender spot. But I knew that I wanted to get this out there because for me, I didn't really get enough of firsthand experiences of other mamas, especially working moms or entrepreneurial mamas, that talked about difficult pregnancies and or births. And so I felt like if I could share my own story, I can help at least one of those other mamas out there that are feeling isolated like I did. Um, and even though it doesn't really have a lot to do with my business, like, I'm a business coach and I'm a mentor and a somatic coach. I think sharing that really personal side of my experience was really important for me to share with my audience. One of the things that I share about a lot is balancing business and motherhood and creating harmony between the two roles. And I really did feel like that was an important story for me to share. But I knew that it wasn't going to feel as authentic as it could feel if I had just like spent a lot of time writing out a post. I mean, I wrote out a few posts about that experience, but I am more authentic whenever I speak. I'm more authentic whenever I am on video or on live with people. So I knew a podcast episode is the way that I wanted to do it. The when was something that I struggled and went back and forth with, right? Because again, the timing of it, I was still pretty raw and I needed to do a lot of my own inner healing work to feel like I could share vulnerably and from the heart from a place of strength. Because what I also didn't want was for people to like feel sorry for me. And people still ended up feeling sorry for me, even after I shared that. But I also think that if you can come to a place where it's not there isn't an underlying element of I want people to feel sorry for me. Because honestly, like if I had shared at the very beginning there would have been an element of that because I was still really in my own process. I was still really feeling into how unfair it felt for me and how much I wanted to be validated in the unjustness of it, the unfairness of it, But I love that I waited. I love that I waited to record it until I could really come to a place of I'm actually really grateful that this happened to me, And I know that kind of makes me want to eye roll whenever I say that, because it wasn't a pretty experience. It wasn't, it didn't feel like it was a blessing, but it did feel like a beautiful opportunity for me to grow as a human being, for me to connect deeper with myself, for me to acknowledge how amazing my body is, like the miracle of what my body is. And I wouldn't have come to a place where I could share it from that kind of perspective if I had recorded that episode a little earlier in the postpartum journey. So I waited, I think, a good 6 to 8 months before I sat down to actually record that episode. And another energetic boundary that I set for myself is after I recorded it, there was no pressure for me to put it out there. I always reserve the right to change my mind. I tell my clients this all the time whenever they are increasing their amount of visibility in their business is like, you don't owe the internet anything. You don't need to feel obligated to share. And so if you end up writing a post that is really heartfelt, but you don't feel called to actually put it out there into the world, you don't have to, right? There is no one making you hit that post button. There's no one making you share parts of yourself that you don't want to share. Not everything needs to be shared in real time, right? There's this level of privacy that you are absolutely entitled to as a human being, right? It's okay to take time to process really vulnerable experiences before choosing to share, if ever. One of the things that I did whenever I was processing through my birth experience and my pregnancy experience was I took a few days to kind of voice journal, basically. I took out my phone, I opened my voice memo app, and I just processed out loud. I cried. I felt all the emotions. I I did it unfiltered. After listening to some of those voice memos back, I'm really glad that I never shared them. I'm glad that I never published them on the podcast. But I also think it was helpful for me to get all of those out and to actually process in real time. And I did a lot of processing inside of my coaching sessions with my one-on-one coach and with my therapist. So that was also helpful, having an outlet. But because I did all of that processing, I was able to really hone in on the message that I wanted to share with my actual audience. And so whenever I did choose to share, the timing felt perfect because it felt like I was finally able to come to the conclusions that I needed to. It felt like I had learned the lessons that I knew I was going to take from this experience to share with my audience and hopefully help other mamas out there that experience something similar, you know? And so I did. I set up a lot of those energetic boundaries. I took the pressure off of myself to share, especially if something felt too vulnerable. The ultimate thing here is like we want to feel safe. We want to feel safe to share really personal things. And if we don't feel safe to share personal things, then we don't. Some signs that you might need some stronger boundaries with this kind of stuff. If you are feeling called to share something, but you're drained thinking about it, you're feeling resentful, you're feeling obligated to post about it, you're having all of these negative thoughts about like I should share this. You're overly critical of yourself. That might indicate that it's time to set some firmer boundaries around what you share, how often you share, and you want your visibility to feel in alignment with where you are currently at. And that's going to look different at different points in your business as life happens in different ways. So setting some firmer boundaries on like how do we take the pressure off for you to be able to show up whenever it feels aligned and fully feel like you can unplug without believing that your business is going to burn to the ground. I definitely had to deal with those feelings whenever I was worried about dropping off the grid during maternity leave. So what are some things that you can put in place that will help you feel really good about that decision to step back and not share? Okay, so a couple of practical things that I wanted to give to you and some different strategies for maintaining visibility and staying consistent without burning yourself out is if you know, especially if you know that there's a phase of your life or there's a season where you're going to be either busier or you're going to be undergoing a lot more stress. You know, maybe you have a vacation coming up, maybe you have a sick parent, maybe the holidays are a really stressful season for you. Like these are some different strategies that you can implement to help maintain visibility in a really authentic way, but not run yourself ragged, you know? The first one is to batch content. I love batching content. It can relieve that pressure to be on all the time while maintaining consistency in your business and still authenticity, right? I pre-record some of my stories that I post on Instagram. And I do that, especially if I'm feeling really inspired. I'll record a little video here and plan out to share those, whenever it feels in alignment. A lot of times for these podcast episodes, I will batch record these podcast episodes. I'll have maybe 2 or 3 podcast episodes that I want to record and talking about different topics. And then I'll just change my shirt or whatever so that it doesn't feel like I'm like recording on the same day. But I'll batch my podcast content, especially if you're feeling in like a really creative burst. I think it can be so helpful to use that creative burst very strategically and plan little bits of that content to go out over time so that you do have that margin to like step back from social media and just like let the scheduled stuff get posted and not feel like you have to put your face to the camera and actually show up live. Another thing, kind of in the same realm as batching content is really planning ahead and automating as much as you can, right? So this is kind of where the more logistical side of my coaching comes in. Like all of you know that I'm a somatic coach. I'm a deep coach. I go really, really deep with my clients and we do a lot of really powerful inner work. And I also think that it's such a beautiful skill to be able to balance that deeper stuff, that deeper inner work with the more tactical planning logistic side of things. And those two together are, I think, what creates that level of freedom whenever you get to a certain point in your business, right? So how planning your content in advance, automating some of your systems, automating emails to go out, scheduling posts, creating space for rest and for personal time is so, so important. Like the more you can automate in your business, the more you can offload. Like if you are someone who has a team, who has a virtual assistant, who has an OBM, like I would offload as much as possible to your team. And then if you don't have a team, how can we set yourself up for success, right? How can we plan ahead whenever you are in that like creative mode and you have all the ideas flowing, and then just schedule it and then let it go, you know? And then this kind of leads into my next strategy here for maintaining visibility without burnout is really introducing the idea of hiring help. Virtual assistant, online business manager, right? To help with like the back end tasks and take over some of the day-to-day posting and the day-to-day things, sending emails, keeping track of payments, like whatever. If you're at the stage in your business where this is needed, this is typically for those of you who have created at least 10 or more, like 10 to 15 or more paying clients. Hiring support would be really, really helpful for you in just kind of like getting a handle on your back-end systems, tightening up those back-end systems, automating as much as you can, and making the operations part of your business flow a little bit more effortlessly without you having to be in it all the time. Hiring support is the next step for you. As soon as I hired support and I, offloaded a lot of those tasks to my team, it opened up my energy and my time, really, which is precious as a one woman show, the person who's running the business. It opened up a lot of my time and my energy to focus on the actions in my business that only I can do, right? Only I can show up live in my stories. Only I can show up live in my Facebook group. Only I can show up and do the authentic connecting and the messaging back and forth and the voice memos and serving my clients. Only I can coach. So the more support that I got with the back end stuff, with planning some of my launches and scheduling out my social media posts and, creating my email campaigns, like those are all things that have given me back so much time and energy. And it's the best investment that you can make if you're looking to scale, This next piece here is going to be very congruent with what I shared last week about hustle. And it's sharing from a place of inspiration versus obligation, right? So the importance of kind of tuning into your inner guidance and noticing when sharing feels like a should rather than a want. That's when it's time to take a step back. If you're starting to feel like you should share something or you should be showing up this many times a week, right? Rather than I want to share this with my audience. I want people to see what I'm experiencing. I want to connect. I think that's the thing, like sharing and showing up on social media and being visible is really about connecting. It's really about connecting with your audience and wanting them to get to know you as a person. I don't believe that being visible is about selling. I think it is a huge part of what sells. But if you're being visible from a place of being inspired and wanting to connect and wanting to share your heart, wanting to get to know your audience's hearts, that's when it feels genuine. That's when it feels authentic. And that is magnetic. Like that draws people to you versus sharing out of obligation. Like I feel like I have to. Honestly, people can sense that. Even if it's on a subconscious level, people can sense that your heart's not really in it whenever you're showing up. So if you're sharing out of obligation, that's a sign to, kind of back up, slow down, and like reassess what your priorities are, reassess where you are at mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and realign yourself before you go back out there, The best content comes when you are inspired and in alignment with your message and your community, and it doesn't have to always happen in real time. It can happen after the fact. You can plan it out. And whenever you do feel those like creative bursts, capitalizing on that time and energy to create as much as you can so that you can plan it out and give yourself that time back. When you're deeply connected When you're deeply connected to yourself, to your heart, to your values, and then with your audience, that desire to share will continue to feel natural and it will continue to feel joyful and exciting and happy. If it ever feels heavy, if it ever feels like a chore, it's time to just check in with yourself and recognize the place that it's coming from. Again, you don't owe the internet anything. This is your life, right? And while I do believe that vulnerability and sharing from a place of like authenticity is so important whenever you're showing up for your business, you also don't owe anyone any of that. Nobody has the right to know about your life unless you are willing to share. And I do think that it is helpful to have that element of rawness and realness to all of your marketing. But if you're not in a place to share, if it feels too unsafe for you to share, then you don't have to. I want to stress that you have choice here, right? Like you have agency, you have full control over how you show up in your business. And if you don't feel like you can show up in your business authentically because it's too painful, that is okay. That is 100% okay. You're a human being. Like you get to have your human experience and process your human experience without having a spotlight on you. And then whenever you're ready, whenever you've processed all that hard stuff, whenever you have gotten the support that you need and nourished yourself enough, you can easily step back into the spotlight. Your business isn't going anywhere. Your audience still knows you. And if anything, if you share from that place, your audience will support you. Your clients will support you. Whenever I had to deliver my son early, I shared really transparently with all the clients that I was working with and with the coaches inside of my membership. I shared with them what was going on, and I was like, "Look, I'm going to need to go on maternity leave early. We can resume whenever I can get back." And they were all so supportive. So if you're attracting the right people, if you're being a magnet to the right people, you'll also know that the community of people that you serve is a supportive one and will back you up if you are having a bad mental health day or a bad mental health month. That's the beauty of creating community and the opportunity to create your own community inside of your business. So to kind of wrap things up, I want to share a couple of practices for you to do, for you to implement in your own business, is do kind of like a daily check-in with yourself. Right? Or weekly, about how you feel showing up online, right? Are you excited? Are you feeling burdened? What is the vibe for this week? If you are feeling like you don't want to show up online, maybe this is a perfect opportunity to kind of create a plan for yourself. Whenever you do get that energy back, how can you capitalize on that energy and make that energy stretch? To give you a little bit of cushion and wiggle room for the next time, because there will be a next time that you don't want to show up again. So doing that daily like reflection or that weekly reflection and getting a sense of where your energy is currently at. Setting some boundaries around social media, right? Take time limits for social media. I love the feature on, like I have an iPhone. So I love the feature on the iPhone where it can cut off certain apps for you after a certain time. Creating content for your business off the cuff only when it feels good. And then like I said, batching it as you go. And then maybe even like setting some off days for social media, setting some boundaries around, okay, there's this one day where I'm not even going to look at my phone. I'm going to put it in another room and I'm going to do what I need to do to feel good today. So those are a few different things for social media. I think also setting some boundaries around who you follow, muting people that honestly, you don't have to have like a logical reason for muting people. If you see someone's content and it immediately gives you like a weird feeling or a bad feeling, being willing to put them on mute or unfollow them. I think cleaning up your social media feed and giving yourself a process for that at least once a month. I do this once a month. And I clean up my social media feed. I unfollow people that don't feel like they add value to my feed, or energy that I don't really want to take in. And again, you don't have to have a logical reason for why. You can just do it. But having that like social media cleanup on a regular basis is going to be another really important boundary for you to set. And then the last thing I would say is create a system that actually works for you. Right? Create your own content calendar that aligns with your energy cycles and kind of like avoids the overwhelm. I have tried so many different templates for content calendars and they never work for me. So I had to create my own. I had to create my own that worked the way that my brain worked. And obviously, if you have a template that you love, continue to use it. But I also believe that every single human being, every entrepreneur is different in the way that their brain works. And if you can be willing to do some trial and error with what systems you're implementing and evaluating consistently, like, is this working for me? Is it not? Is this matching the kind of energy that I want to go into my business with? That's super important. So making sure to try different systems. And then if you don't find a system that already exists, fucking make your own. Right? We're all making shit up here. We're all making it up as we go. And every successful entrepreneur out there has a system that works for them, right? They don't mold themselves to fit the system. Like, they create it. That's what the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is, we get to also use that innovative, creative part of our brains. So create a system that works for you. Final thoughts here. You don't owe the internet anything. Right? Nobody has the right to your personal life. Nobody has the right to your stories. Nobody has the right to your heart. So, I hope this episode was a little permission slip for you to let go of the pressure of always showing up online. And then I also hope that it gave you some practical tips for how to stay consistent, even if you're not always feeling like you want to show up, right? There are systems that we can put in place for you to be visible consistently to your audience and to grow your coaching business without always having to be on. Like, you don't always have to be in it and doing things live and in real time. You are in total control of how you show up. And if you're not in a place to give away your energy or your vulnerability, you reserve that right to keep it for yourself. The internet will still be there whenever you're ready to share, whenever you're ready to come back, whenever you're feeling filled up enough. But that has to be the priority, right? You filling yourself up has to be the priority. I want to invite you to kind of reflect on the relationship that you have with showing up and being visible and feeling that constant pressure to be on all the time and to show up all the time, and explore kind of like what feels the most aligned for you moving forward. Like, if we're going to revamp the way that you are visible online, how can we do it in a way that is the most in alignment with you? That is going to be very different from the next coach, right? So even if you have to take out a sheet of paper and just jot some of this down and do a little bit of a journaling thing here, I invite you to do so. If you are curious about kind of creating some of those systems and putting those systems in place, like putting in time and energy now to kind of save you time and energy later, I would love to invite you into my membership, Tech Mastery for Coaches. I've got a really exciting, sweet little deal that I'm going to be announcing later this week or maybe early next week. So stay tuned. I'll throw the link for the membership in the show notes for you guys. I hope you have a really beautiful week ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If this was helpful for you, subscribe to the show to make sure you're always in the loop when a new episode is out. And I would love to invite you to join me in the free Visibility and Tech Support for Coaches community, where we hang out and chat about all things visibility, tech, systems, and heart-centered business building. I regularly share tips and tutorials and go live every now and then, and it's just nice to be in a community with other like-minded coaches and healers. So you can join this free space at alignwellco.com/community, and I can't wait to see you there.